Now, this relation that relates itself to itself in the relation is sort of a complicated thing, as we've seen. The relation, Kierkegaard points out to us, is conditional. Right? It's a relation that didn't establish itself. We are conditional creatures. We relate to food, shelter, clothing, breathing air. We relate to a world that's in a sense alien to us, that we have to make sense of. We relate to a future that we don't understand. We relate to other people that we, in a sense, can't really comprehend. We relate to all of this stuff that doesn't depend on our will. Right? And as we relate to all of this stuff that doesn't depend on our will, our jobs, the economy, our relationships, and that sort of thing, right? That's at least where the potential for the breakdown in this relation that relates itself to itself, that we call despair, to come on the scene. Right? When I say to myself, I'm stupid, or when I say to myself, I'm not good enough, when I say to myself, I wish I were this rather than that, basically what I am saying is that I can't take myself seriously in this relation. Right? So despair, right, Kierkegaard points out, is always possible. It's always lurking there in a human being. This is a condition, right? And what's more, it's a good thing that it's always possible, though its actuality is miserable. Right? This despair is a sickness of the spirit, right? Or basically that I cannot give myself meaning, that I cannot take myself seriously, that this relationship is something that I either don't want, don't like, or wish was different. Right? So it's a breakdown in the relation. Now, considered this way, right? Considered this way, despair as a sickness is different than like a cold or a flu virus, right? Which you let yourself get run down at one point, you contract one of these things, and then you suffer it because at one moment, right, in your past, right, you let yourself get run down, didn't properly take care of yourself, or something along those lines. So what you are at blame, yes, you let yourself get sick, right? What you're at blame for is something that happened in the past, right? So your relationship to this kind of physical sickness is one that sort of diminishes over time, right? Eventually, hopefully, you get better, right? Whereas despair is a different kind of sickness altogether, right? Insofar as we are in despair, at every moment we're in despair, insofar as it's a breakdown in the relation that relates itself to itself in the relation, right? We are doing it to ourselves the entire time we're in it, right? If I'm saying that I'm not a good enough philosopher, I'm not a good boyfriend, or I suck as a son, or I'm not being a good friend to my friends, or I'm not doing a good job of my job, and this sucks, and I'm in despair as a result of this, who's done this to me? Right? It's not my friends, or the economy, or my job, or the institutions. It's not the world that's done this to me. If despair is a sickness of spirit, right? Spirit is the self. I've done it to myself, which is why Kierkegaard claims that despair is sin. Despair, not being conscious of having a self, what you're doing is you're ignoring that you are a relation that's relating itself to itself in a relation in a way that cares, right? Despair, not to want to be oneself, right, is saying that you're this established conditional relation that's thrown into the world with the opportunity to exist, and you don't want it. You say, my life sucks, myself sucks, I don't want to be myself. I wish I weren't me, right? So, again, you've done it to yourself, right? And with this incredible gift. Here you exist as a relation that's disposed to itself in a way that cares, right? What you've said to yourself is that you would prefer not to exist. It's sin, right? Insofar as, one, it's all your fault, and two, right, at the prospect of existing, you're saying, no thank you, right? Despair of the third sort, to will to be oneself. You're thrown into the world as this relation that relates itself to itself as a relation in a way that cares, and you're saying, I wish I were me, but only this, that, the other thing, different, right? It's not the world's fault, it's not existence fault, it's not being's fault, it's not God's fault that you are not X, Y, or Z. Right? And right, it's not existence being God's, the world's fault that you're not satisfied with who you are. Right? What Kierkegaard wants to point out to us about despair is it's all on us. It's all on us. Right? Nobody's doing it to us. Right? So in way of a solution, what Kierkegaard wants to point to is this leap of faith, right? Which is a choice. It's a significant choice, right? In what way is it a significant choice? Well, first off, it's different than just simply believing in God, right? Or believing in, if you prefer not God, believing in the world, right? I believe that the world exists. All of this stuff is here. I believe in it, right? But, right, do I trust it to make a certain kind of sense? Right? Do I trust it to be meaningful? Right? The problem with despair in all of these different ways of relating to ourselves is that we can't take ourselves seriously. Our actions don't present themselves as meaningful to us. My life isn't worth it if I'm not Caesar or Brad Pitt or what have you, right? But, right, if we are able to make this leap of faith, which is important to Kierkegaard, right, this significant choice that impacts the way that we relate to ourselves as a relation, right, basically what we do is we trust the world to be a meaningful place and not completely meaningless. Right? We trust that our actions have some sort of significance, right? What Kierkegaard wants to claim is that we cannot live without faith to some degree or another. So this is why it's a response to the Enlightenment rationalists. Right? What do I mean by that? Right? Well, when I drive somewhere, right, when I step out the door with the key to my car, I have faith that my car will start. Right? When I say I will be there at 1 o'clock for my office hours, I have faith that the car won't break down, that I won't have trouble at the border, that I won't get into a wicked accident on I-75 or whatever highway I happen to be driving on. Right? When I say that I am in a meaningful relationship with somebody, right, I have faith that at some point I'm not going to choose to cheat or walk away from this relationship. I have faith that the other person is not going to do that as well. I have faith that we're both going to work together to produce a life for one another. So what Kierkegaard wants to point out to us is that in a million small ways every day, right, we take these leaps of faith, right? But ultimately, the way that we overcome despair and live a happy, healthy relationship to ourselves in the relation, right, is by taking this larger leap of faith, right, that tells us that the universe is a meaningful place, right, that tells us perhaps that there is a God there who loves us, cares about us, and has a plan.